Hello, hello. I am so excited to be with you today. There were some changes with my coaching conversation series, but I have learned to be both agile and adaptive. And I'm excited because I get to be in conversation with myself. I don't know how that sounds, but it is what it is. As I share a little bit more about who I am as your Love Big coach and about how I became this person, right? How I became the Love Big coach. So for those who don't know me, my name is Rozella Haydée White, and I go by the moniker of the Love Big Coach. This is because my first book, my first solo book project in the world was or is entitled Love Big, The Power of Revolutionary Relationships to Heal the World. And this book was published in 2019. And I started thinking about this book many years before that, probably about 5 years before that in some way, shape, or form. And I knew that I wanted to write something that dealt with a couple of themes that are part and parcel to my life. So one of those themes is love. Another of those themes is faith and spirituality. And then I think the other big theme is about relationships, right? So Love Big was a book that explored these things and introduced this concept of love big. And it's not big love, right? It's not the name of the series on Showtime, but it's Love Big, partially because I wanted love to be this force, right, that we actually get to engage and be a part of in the world. And it's not something that is just done to others. It's something that we co-create and embody and that we live into. So I define love as a force, an active force that creates, that liberates, and that brings about individual and holistic healing for the sake of our transformation. And anyone who knows me knows that I talk about being the Love Big coach. Big stands for love that is bold and intentional and generous. And so when I talk about love, I'm not talking about sentimentality. I'm not talking about a feeling. I'm not even talking about romantic or the romanticism that we often think about when we think about love, even though I am a romantic. And again, I'm a romantic and believer in love in a way that expands beyond intimate partner relationship, right? So love is my call in this world. And I often tell my parents that I am who I am because of who they are. So I'm the rose that grew from concrete. And I talk a little bit about my upbringing in the book, but my parents were people from the proverbial opposite sides of the tracks. And I'm using air quotes when I say that because it can mean various things to various people. But essentially, my parents were two very different people with two very different lived realities. Both of them experienced heartache and struggle. And in reflecting on their lives now, right, we know that all roads led them to each other at different seasons in their lives. And I am their only born child, right? My parents have children, various children, and I have many siblings, but I am the love child of my parents, if you will. And so I feel like all the love that they had for each other and a love that has stood the test of time. So when they first met in their late teens, early 20s, to when they had me, to the time that they were apart, to the time that they came back together to be the married couple that many of you know them to be today, I am the embodiment of their love. And then the other piece that when I think of Love Big and what is part and parcel to who I am, it's about my faith and spirituality. And this too is something that comes from my family line and my family lineage. So I often share that my name is the name of my grandparents, of my grandmothers. My father's mom, her name was Rozella. And my mother's mom, her name was Haydée Gisela. And so I am Rozella Haydée, right? The granddaughters of these two, again, very different women, one whose story departs from the history of enslaved folks in the United States of America, and then the other whose story is deeply rooted in the Caribbean, in Puerto Rico, in Jamaica, and those two women came together also years later and became best of friends. And one of the things that I believe was absolutely foundational to both of their lives was faith, was their connection to the divine. My grandmother, who is from the South, who is descendant of sharecroppers and the formerly enslaved, came out of the holiness and Pentecostal tradition. My grandmother, who's from the Caribbean, came out of both the Catholic Church, some African traditional religions, some Santeria, and ultimately ended up in the Lutheran Church. So when I think about faith and spirituality, it's also big, right? It's not able to be put into a box. I was raised as someone who identified as Christian. I was raised within the Lutheran denomination, the progressive Lutheran denomination. And over the last probably 7 years, I have been on a journey of reclaiming my ancestry and reclaiming ways of knowing and understanding and experiencing the divine that go beyond, right, this I think, narrow understanding of who God is that religion often peddles and perpetuates, to one that is much more expansive, that includes connecting with the divinity within, the divinity that's in nature, the divinity that's in the collective, and ultimately leads us back to love over and over again. And then the third piece of who I am is deeply rooted in relationships. I am a relational being because I believe in a relational God. And I am someone who believes that relationships have the power to bring about healing and restoration and wholeness. And when I talk about relationships, it's not that the relationship provides that for me. It's that I am in relationship with myself and with the divine and with you. And within those intersecting realities, we then are able to co-create a new way of being, believing, and behaving. So that's what makes me the Love Big Coach. And then there are other things that influence this, right? I am a student of Bell Hooks and embrace what she called being a love practitioner. So my hope is to continue to build on work of people like her, on work of people like James Baldwin and Howard Thurman and mystics religions over, who understand that love has the power to change us, and that love invites us to new ways of understanding ourselves and each other, and invites us into those hard and those broken and those previously divisive spaces in order for something new to emerge, something new within me, something new within you, and then something new that comes out of those relationships. So love, my faith and spirituality, and relationships are the pillars of who I am as the Love Big Coach. I walked away from my work as a faith leader, as a ministry leader, and I recently had a mentor tell me that the best thing that I ever did was follow my call. And I always knew that I was called to faith leadership, spiritual leadership, and healing work, but I knew that it was not in the confines of traditional religious structures. I didn't know what that meant and what that looked like, but I never fit. I've never fit. And I had a pastor years ago ask me, why am I always trying to fit? And in that moment, it really broke my heart, because I realized later that he could see this struggle of me trying to make myself fit in spaces and places. And he says, you're not meant to fit in. You're not meant to be this person that you think people expect or want you to be. You are meant to be fully who you are. And that has stayed with me over the last decade. And in 2016, I walked away from the work and call that I had within more traditional religious structures, and especially within the bureaucracy, right? I often say I was a church bureaucrat. I worked as a director in a national denomination office and headquarters, and I wasn't just directing a program. My work was specific with young adults and with those who were between the ages of 18 and 35, and the ministries and organizations that worked with them, both domestically and internationally. And that was one piece of my work, but I was also a leader within my denomination. So I was involved in leadership within the unit that I was in. I was involved in leadership within what we would consider the C-suite, right, of the organization. I was an advisor in some respects to our CEO and presiding bishop. I was a theological writer. I was invited into a variety of projects and got to see what happens within organizations, especially within organizations that are struggling with clarifying their voice, vision, and values, and with organizations that do have, and I really believe this about at least the denomination I was a part of, that did have positive intent, but was not able to create and craft infrastructure that deepened their impact, right? So as I walked away from that work, I knew that I wanted to work with organizations, specifically faith-based organizations and largely nonprofit organizations, because I believe that these are the places and spaces in the context I'm in, so in the United States of America, that have the heart for the people, right? When we think about the United States, we are not a country where our government is going to be the entity that cares for the most vulnerable. That does not happen. But we do have incredible not-for-profit organizations, and we do have faith communities whose goal and whose focus is on caring for the least of those within our midst. And that's a religious term or a spiritual term, but those who are experiencing marginalization and oppression, even as we are the ones that are complicit in that, and we are the ones that are continuing to dismantle and divest from it. And so I knew that I wanted to work with organizations that cared the most about the issues of our time, the injustices of our time. And I also knew that many of these organizations and these faith communities don't have the organizational development background to align their intention and their impact within the infrastructure that allows for them to be healthy and to do this work in ways that are rooted and grounded in their identity. So that's what I wanted to do. And that's what I do from an organizational coaching perspective. I work exclusively with organizations that are led and or founded by women, by BIPOC folks, by Black, Indigenous, people of color, and by queer folks, because we are also those communities and groups that have been marginalized. So I want to support those who are leading in that space as well. I also do individual coaching. And when it comes to one-on-one coaching, a lot of coaches have moved to group coaching programs exclusively, group coaching memberships. And I'm someone who just loves the one-on-one work. I love accompanying a client, and they're clients now that I've been working with for over 3 years, right? I love accompanying clients as they are navigating change, transition, and conflict, as they're in that space of the in-between. And partially that's because I feel like my entire life has been in the in-between, right? In every season of my life, there has been significant transition. I don't know if that's part of my reality for as long as I'll be on this planet or what, but I have become, I don't want to say good, but I have become very present to the liminal space, to those places and spaces of wondering, of wandering, of feeling the grief, of experiencing the shifts, of not knowing fully who you are or where you are or what is next. And I adore supporting people in those spaces. The majority of people that I coach are women, though I do every now and then coach men, but that's on purpose, right? I coach women because I am a woman and I speak to women's lived realities and existence. With men, I tend to only coach men who are very clear about patriarchal society, who are in some way, shape, or form feminists themselves, and who have already nurtured or cultivated an inner self-awareness and a spirituality. But I love supporting women, especially women who are, again, in transition, and women who are leaders. So whether I'm working with an organization where I'm going to be coaching the leadership of that organization, or I'm working with clergy women, executive directors, right, C-suite leaders that are in nonprofit organizations, I am working with people to embody more life-giving and justice-seeking love in their life that impacts their life and their leadership. So this makes me the Love Big Coach. I am constantly inviting folks to work with me and to consider what's possible and create new realities through the power of coaching. And coaching is something that has absolutely changed my life. I say that it started as a competitive cheerleader in Texas. So I've always had a coach in my life that helped me to deepen in my gifts, that gave me strategies for expanding my ability and capacities. I had coaching when I was a young adult in college. I had coaching as a professional. And when it came time for me to depart my previous role, I knew that coaching was going to be a part of my practice. I didn't know that it would be the main methodology at that time. And I would say from 2016 to 2020, right up until the pandemic began, I started to think about what would it look like for everything that I do to depart from an orientation of coaching. And so for me, that looks like, and I'm going to be interviewing someone tomorrow, my dear friend Rashida Graham-Washington is going to talk more about organizational coaching and consulting. But coaching, being a coach first, but says that I am not the expert. I have expertise, but I am not the expert, that we together, right, are building a new thing. And that my job as coach is to help you remember and recover the truth of who you are and of what's possible, and that you are the expert of your life. There is no one else who knows your life and knows your story and knows what's possible more than you. And if you believe in a higher power, then there's no one else outside of you and that higher power that know that. And my job is to bear witness to support you, and to provide the questions and the invitations for you to go deeper into who you are. And so I adore being a coach. I adore my clients. I adore that this is the work that I get to do, because in the words of Reverend soon-to-be Dr. Juanita Rasmus, it is my pleasure. It brings me such profound joy and pleasure to do this work. So I would love to work with you. I would love to support you. If you are someone who is navigating the in-between, right? If you are moving from one stage of life to another, I would love to work with you. If you are navigating transition and conflict, I would love to work with you. If you are an organization that's a nonprofit that is seeking to align your intent and your infrastructure so that you have the deepest possible impact, I would love to work with you. If you are committed to an anti-racist, anti-privileged, anti-oppressive way of being as an individual leader and as an organization, I would love to work with you. And if you are not only curious about, but if this notion of a love ethic is bringing something up in you, right? If it's inspiring some type of curiosity, some type of wondering, I would love to work with you, because I believe that we need more lovers in this world, and lovers of self, lovers of others, lovers of creation, in order for us to build a new reality. And I think it's possible. I am just naive enough to believe that love has the power to heal us all. So follow me if you are not already connected with me across platforms at Love Big Coach. My website is rozellahwhite.com. I would love to connect with you, and I hope that you continue to watch this series, the Elevate Coaching series, which will be a quarterly series where I will invite various coaches of various backgrounds into conversation to not only uplift this industry, right, of coaching, but also to talk about what good coaching is and what coaching is not, and to hopefully provide you with resources as you are creating and living your most meaningful life. So thank you for being here. I hope that you join us this week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, where we're back on our schedule at 12 noon, as I'll be inviting different coaches into conversation throughout Women's History Month. And it's at 12 p.m. Central. These videos for now are also on my Facebook page, but you can also find the whole playlist over at YouTube, again, at Love Big Coach. And I hope you consider to be curious about your life, about what it is that you want, about what it is that you feel like you're missing, and about what's possible when you lean into all of those questions. So thank you for being here, and I love you big.